U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer is defending administration policy after U.S. job growth slowed. That was reported today. We went over a lot of that. Earlier today, Greer spoke with Face the Nation's Margaret Brennan, and she asked if tariffs are impacting that very underlying job market. Listen.
I think a lot of companies were waiting to see if the tax bill was going to come through with the expensing for capital goods and things like that. And so I think now, a lot of that data comes pre One Big Beautiful Bill. Now that we have One Big Beautiful Bill and we have a better sense of where the taxes are going, I think we're going to see we're going to see more investment. All the commitments on investment we've seen countries making, that's going to come through. And like you said, it's a relatively small number. So I don't read tariff policy into that number. I think that is kind of pre-bill policy.
CBS News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent and Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan joins me here at the family table. Great to have you here.
Good to be here.
So the messaging this week from the administration was the tax bill will save us from whatever privations, small, medium, or large, might come from tariffs.
That's right. And so you heard the ambassador there sort of dismissing what I was specifically pointing to was the lack of manufacturing job creation. Right. This has been months and months.
Not just the last month or two.
Not the factory jobs that were promised in terms of this tariff policy, which was supposed to bring all those jobs back to America and not in
the great
cheaper markets. Yeah. Exactly. And so you heard him dismiss that there. The ambassador also said, though, that basically wait and see. His phone's blowing up, he says, with calls from trade ministers who want to ratchet down the tariff rates that the president just announced on 70 or so countries overnight. He says, though, they're pretty much set, that there isn't negotiating before they go into effect August the 7th. He really did acknowledge, though, that when it came to corporate profit reporting from Apple, from GM, from Ford and Stellantis, they have said tariffs are impacting their profits. But this was another kind of, we'll wait and see because the great reshoring will bring all that back. And this is just sort of, growing pains. The big enchilada here, though, of course, is what happens with the second largest economy in the world, China. On that front, he says things are trending positively. And August 12th, when the tariffs are supposed to roll out, that does come into question. He said they may shift.
Peter Navarro on this very program indicated very much the same earlier this week. Margaret, I need to lean on you for your expertise on the Middle East, and my audience will benefit from it. How should we interpret the pictures that we saw today, which seem to be, and I think this is a fair description, carefully arranged, with lots of signage in the background talking about the success of humanitarian outreach in Gaza, which is up against statistics that suggest quite the opposite?
Well, these pictures that we have seen of this very rare visit into Gaza by Special Envoy Witkoff and the U.S. ambassador, we're only seeing because the U.S. government released them. It's important to say that journalists are not allowed to go into Gaza. The Israeli government does not permit them to enter to freely report. So these are handouts from the United States government at a site that the United States government and the Israeli government support. That's where you see the signage in English, and you see Envoy Witkoff wearing his Trump administration gear there. But this is a military zone that is encircled by the IDF, by the Israeli military. The aid at this distribution point, one of four, is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is newly set up. It's U.S.-backed. These are military contractors. In other words, it's not the United Nations using humanitarian networks that have been there for decades. That's part of the controversy here. What we know is that the food is insufficient to the need. You saw the numbers they claim were handed out. Well, you also have President Trump himself saying he saw the pictures. They're not fake. There are starving children in Gaza. The state of Israel says there's no starvation. They deny any actual widespread famine-like conditions because they say the UN is biased against them and in the pocket of Hamas. So you have a disputing of fact.
And facts on the ground and real human suffering. That is evident to those, and would be more evident to your earlier point if there was more visibility into what's actually going on in Gaza. And we're not so tightly controlled.
That's right. We do have colleagues inside of Gaza who are suffering while reporting, but documenting what's happening there. And when we reached out today, we were told the famine's worsening every day. That was a term our reporter there used, pushing people to move further to the north to reach the aid first, and the Israeli army is shooting at them. That is the documentation from that reporter that matches with what the UN has said, which is that there has been a high degree of actual shooting deaths at these sites operated by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation because of the military encirclement there, because of the conditions. And that's part of the argument that if you militarize aid, food, that there's a risk level there. President Trump has sent Witkoff there to give him back a report that he says will influence his policymaking. And they are acknowledging that they need more than food and they need more than the amount that's going in. They need medical aid at this point to deal with acute malnutrition. They need sewage treatment, water, fuel.
Margaret Brennan, thank you so very much. You can watch the rest of Margaret's interview with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer on Face the Nation this Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern, right here on CBS News 24/7.